I think the overriding issue for 2015 is going to be transportation. While folks in our area passed the T-Splost, obviously it didn't pass in Atlanta, it didn't pass in a lot of other regions in the state, and we've got to figure out how we're going to move Georgia from 49th in per capita infrastructure spending. Well, I think simply we're talking about moving people and also moving goods, freight. Georgia's growth has largely been fueled by the fact we're a logistical hub. You have Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, you have the port in Savannah. We're a destination if you want to be able to move things quickly in and out. And the problem is we've lived off of these investments made in the 60s and 70s. We're getting ready to open a much deeper port of Savannah that can take on this post-Panamax ships. A lot more container traffic. We're growing, have almost 10 million people in this state, and our infrastructure has to grow with us. I'd say there are a number of ways. When I think about it from the perspective of Senate District 29, the easiest example is Kia. Kia moves a tremendous amount of material in and out of the Port of Savannah. If they're not able to get those goods back and forth in a timely fashion, I mean, all of this business runs on a just-in-time model. So they've got to have the flow of raw material and the flow of cars out on a regular basis, or their business model doesn't work. So, there's probably no one, well, maybe a couple of people that would want a train to Atlanta more than me. I mean, I'm burning up 185 and 85 probably as much as anybody.
Okay.
I don't think it's realistic, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the places where high-speed rail has been successful, it's where you're traveling from one very population-dense area to another very population-dense area, and you're able to get the ridership that will make it work. And unfortunately, going from a metro area of 200,000 or 300,000 people to a metro area of 5 million people, you don't have that flow going in both directions that you really need to make it sustainable. And so, I'm not against rail. I think rail has a role to play, but I just don't think that project is feasible. I mean, for me, I've always been interested in state government, and particularly things we can do on the state level to make our state a better place to get a job, raise your family. That was just something that always interested me, and local government was just not something I was as interested in.
Where'd your interest in politics come from?
That probably goes back to when I was in the 4th grade. We had a mock election at Brookstone, and I remember being asked by the teacher, there were 2 or 3 of us, we counted the votes after it was over, and I just thought that was really neat that we get to pick our leaders. We all get to make that decision. And really ever since then, the next year when I got into middle school, I ran for student government office unsuccessfully.
So your first campaign was a failure?
No, it didn't work out too well.
Who beat you?
I was running as a 5th grader for an office that the 8th grade always had. So it was just, I wanted to go down and make my case, and it didn't work out. I know I at least got 1
vote. You've gravitated to Republican candidates early, right?
I've always identified more with the Republican Party than any other political party.
Why?
I believe that the Republican Party stands for allowing the individual to sort of be the master of their own destiny. Kind of get the government out of your way, leave you alone, and allow you to achieve your potential. And that's really what I think the country was founded on, was this idea that we're going to give you a platform where you can sink or swim, but we're going to give you a fair shot. We're going to give everybody, as much as we can, a good start in terms of your initial education, and then from there give you that every opportunity to be successful. It can be very difficult. I think what you've got to do is try to the extent possible to treat others the way you would want to be treated, and that is to say, if I have a disagreement with somebody on an issue, I'm not going to look at that when dealing with them in another context. For example, if I have a member of the General Assembly I have a disagreement with on one issue, and then they have a bill that comes before my committee, I'm not going to take it out on that bill or take it out on that issue, because that does not just a disservice to that person, but our whole process if we get away from what are the merits of the issues. I think when politics becomes personal, I think that the biggest problem I've seen is when people get upset with someone and they say, well, you're on my list, and you think about the end of a ball game. Everybody fights real hard, but at the end of the game, you cross the field and you shake hands with the other side, and you move on. And I think that at the federal level, particularly, we've gotten to a place where the atmosphere that's been created is so toxic that it's very difficult to get meaningful policy accomplished. It was not popular. I've told people that there almost seems to be an inverse relationship to how popular something is back home with how popular it is inside the Capitol.
Yeah.
And that's probably Exhibit A for that.
You weren't the cool kid on campus for a few years.
No, it doesn't make you popular, but you also have to ask yourself, why did I run for office, and why am I up there? Am I up there to win a popularity contest, or am I up there to try to effect change that's important? And to me, the number one problem with government and being able to get things done is nobody trusts anybody that's in elected office. We have an opportunity here to show that we can regulate ourselves, we can set reasonable limits, and begin to show the public that we're worthy of their trust.
It's perceived as an anti-gay bill.
That is the tension point. That is the tension point, that people feel like this is in some way aimed at the gay and lesbian community, and nothing could be further from the truth. When you look at the city of Kennesaw saying to a group of Muslims, we're going to deny zoning to a mosque, and when they're pressed on it, they say, well, we just don't allow houses of worship in these strip mall shopping centers. And then you find out that 6 months earlier they allowed a Pentecostal church in there. These are the kinds of things that this bill is designed to address, so that there's, somebody doesn't literally have to go to federal court to try to get some kind of relief. It's to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen in our state. I do think it's really important for people to understand something, which is there was a bill introduced in Arizona in 2014, and that bill specifically talked about denying service to people based on someone's religious belief. I don't think that's right. I don't agree with that. That's not what my bill does. The bill that I introduced has been on the books in Arizona since 1999, and it's been the law on the federal level since 1993. It's not controversial. You can go through 20 years of court decisions, and no court has ever interpreted that in a way to shield discriminatory conduct of any kind. In 1997, there was a court case out of Texas where a municipality in Texas said the federal government can't set the legal standard for state or local government action. And the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with that. So what you saw after that decision in 1997 were individual states passing bills that mirrored the federal law that applied to state and local government action. One of the persistent things I've heard is there's not enough money for K through 12 education, not just in our state, but specifically here in Muskogee County. And then we started looking at these bidding processes and the way that procurement is done. And I said, it seems to me that a lot of money is getting wasted on no bid contracts that are not competitively bid. That was basically the message I communicated to several members of the Board of Education, that I think we ought to have competitive bidding, and also I think we ought to look at this 2.5%, and also I think we ought to look at other ways of generating revenue or cutting costs. The upshot of all that was a couple members of the school board decided that they had a personal problem with me making these calls for changes in the way they were doing business. And so, there's no kind way to say this. They invented some allegations that were untrue about me to try to discredit my criticism of some of the school district's practices. And so I had to go through first a process with the Senate Ethics Committee, which dismissed all of the allegations. Then they took the extraordinary step of getting a law enforcement agency involved by calling the chief of police, who then, by policy, referred it out to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The GBI reviewed it, found that there was absolutely no problem. The Attorney General's office reviewed it, found that there was no problem.
What did the situation teach you?
To always have a witness with you when you're having those kind of conversations. I mean, it's, I think that, we're fortunate in that several members have a very long tenure in the General Assembly. They understand the process and understand the players. And so I would say on issues that are important to Muskogee County and to Columbus, we all work well together. We make sure we're all on the same page. As I said before, I want to be active, in my community. I want to try to make Columbus and the area I represent a better place. And I think that if you look at anything I do, it's animated by a desire to do that. Building relationships around the state helps you do that. It's real hard to project into the future and say, what would happen in 2016, what would happen in 2018. What I do know is that I feel like I'm well positioned to make an impact on public policy in this state. Well, I keep running for re-election, so yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I feel like you're able to do a lot of good for people. We've talked about a lot of issues. I would say that the thing that you get the most personal enjoyment from is the constituent service. I had a gentleman that recently who had an issue getting his retirement through with the Georgia National Guard. And, we worked on that issue for about 6 months, got it worked out. But when somebody comes to you with tears in their eyes about, this is going to change my life because this bureaucratic junk got worked out, that's what makes you want to come back. I compare it to going and playing a round of golf. You may have a horrible day, but you have that one good shot that you feel like, I need to come back out here and do this again. And that's what I feel about this is, you don't hit a home run every time, but every now and then you're able to do something pretty neat. And so I'm excited about next year. I'm excited about the opportunities it brings. And I'm excited about what I think the next 2 years will mean for the future of this area.